In the deep shadows of South Carolina's Low Country, where the Murdaugh family had wielded the power of life and death for 100 years, gunshots rang out not to punish criminals, but to end a dynasty. On that fateful night, Alex Murdaugh called 911 with a voice trembling with horror, reporting that his wife and son had been murdered. But he never imagined that a 58-second video from a dead man's phone would expose the true face of a devil disguised as a model father. If you want to follow every twist and turn of this shocking case that brought down one of America's most powerful legal dynasties, subscribe to our channel for the complete story and more chilling true crime mysteries. For over a century, the Murdaugh name was synonymous with justice in South Carolina's 14th Judicial Circuit. 3 generations of Murdaughs served consecutively as solicitors, the chief prosecutors for the region, encompassing Hampton, Jasper, Colleton, Beaufort, and Allendale counties. From 1920 to 2006, a Murdaugh held this position without interruption. They were not just lawyers, but architects of the legal landscape, shaping prosecutions and wielding influence that extended far beyond the courtroom. The family's wealth was as legendary as their power. Their hunting estate, Moselle, sprawled across 700 acres of South Carolina wilderness. Alex Murdaugh, born Richard Alexander Murdaugh, on May 27, 1968, seemed destined to continue this legacy. He built a successful career as a personal injury and wrongful death attorney at the family law firm Peters Murdaugh, Parker Ellaby, and Hebert, known locally as PMPED. To the outside world, Alex embodied success with his loving wife, Margaret Maggie Kennedy Murdaugh, and their 2 sons, Richard Alexander Buster Murdaugh and Paul Terry Murdaugh. But beneath this polished exterior, cracks had begun to form. Alex struggled with an addiction to opioid painkillers that would eventually consume nearly 2,000 pills per week. More sinister still, he had been systematically embezzling millions of dollars from clients and his own law firm for years, creating an elaborate web of deceit to fuel his addiction and maintain his lavish lifestyle. The first public fracture in the Murdaugh facade occurred on February 24, 2019, when 19-year-old Paul Murdaugh was operating his father's boat on Archers Creek near Paris Island. Paul, intoxicated with a blood alcohol level more than 3 times the legal limit, crashed the boat into a bridge piling. Among the 6 people aboard was 19-year-old Mallory Beach, who was thrown into the dark waters and never seen alive again. Her body was recovered a week later on March 3, 2019. The boating accident ignited public outrage that the Murdaughs had never experienced. Alex attempted to use his family's influence to shield Paul from consequences, reportedly trying to convince survivors to lie about who was driving. But this time, the Murdaugh power faced real opposition. The Beach family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Alex, Paul, and the convenience store that allegedly sold alcohol to the underage Paul. This litigation would prove catastrophic as it began unraveling Alex's financial crimes when lawyers sought detailed accounting of his assets. By early 2021, the walls were closing in. PMPED had discovered irregularities in client funds. The wrongful death lawsuit threatened to expose Alex's fraudulent financial dealings. On June 7, 2021, everything came to a violent end at Moselle. That evening, according to the timeline established at trial, Paul Murdaugh recorded a video on his phone at 8:44 p.m., showing the family's dog at the kennels on the property. The video would later prove crucial. At 8:49, Paul's phone registered 283 steps, suggesting his movement stopped permanently. At 9:02 p.m., Maggie's phone showed her last activity. At 9:06 p.m., Alex's vehicle left the property. At 10:06 p.m., Alex called 911 from Moselle. The dispatcher recorded his frantic words, claiming he had just returned home to find his wife and son dead at the dog kennels. When first responders arrived, they found a horrific scene. Paul Murdaugh, 22 years old, had been shot twice with a shotgun at close range, causing catastrophic injuries to his head, neck, and shoulder. Maggie Murdaugh, 52 years old, had been shot 5 times with a rifle, including shots to her head as she appeared to be running away. Alex told investigators he had not been at the kennels that evening. He claimed he had been visiting his ailing mother at her home in Almeida and had discovered the bodies upon his return around 10 p.m. This alibi would become the cornerstone of his defense and the linchpin of the prosecution's case. As investigators delved deeper into the Murdaugh family history, disturbing patterns emerged. On February the 26th, 2018, Gloria Satterfield, the Murdaugh family's longtime housekeeper, died following what was described as a trip-and-fall accident at the family's Moselle property. Alex Murdaugh had approached her sons, promising to help them file a wrongful death claim against his homeowner's insurance. He recommended they hire attorney Corey Fleming, his close friend. A settlement of approximately $4.3 million was reached, but Gloria's sons never received the money. Alex and Fleming had conspired to steal the entire settlement, leaving the Satterfield family with nothing, while Gloria's sons struggled even to pay for her funeral. Another shadow from the past emerged with the death of 19-year-old Stephen Smith, found dead in the middle of Sandy Run Road in Hampton County on July 8, 2015. The death was officially ruled a hit and run, but the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division reopened the investigation in June 2021 based on information gathered during the double homicide investigation. While no charges were filed connecting the Murdaughs to Stephen's death, rumors had long circulated in the community about the family's potential involvement. 3 months after the murders on September 4, 2021, Alex Murdaugh called 911 again, this time reporting he had been shot in the head while changing a tire on a rural road. He survived with superficial wounds, claiming an unknown assailant in a passing truck had shot him. The story quickly unraveled. Alex admitted to state investigators that he had arranged his own shooting, hiring Curtis Edward Smith to kill him, so his surviving son Buster could collect a $10 million life insurance policy. The assisted suicide scheme failed, and Alex was arrested. This bizarre incident marked Alex's fall from grace. He was stripped of his law license and entered drug rehabilitation. But more importantly, it opened the floodgates. Between September 2021 and July 2022, Alex was indicted on over 90 financial crimes, spanning nearly a decade, including breach of trust, obtaining property by false pretenses, money laundering, computer crimes, and forgery. Prosecutors alleged he had stolen nearly $9 million from clients his law firm and the Satterfield family. On July 14, 2022, Alex Murdaugh was formally indicted for the murders of Maggie and Paul. Prosecutors faced a challenging case built largely on circumstantial evidence, but they possessed one devastating piece of proof that would shatter Alex's alibi. The trial began on January 25, 2023, in the Colleton County Courthouse. Lead prosecutor Creighton Waters methodically built a case arguing that Alex murdered his wife and son to gain sympathy and buy time as his financial crimes were about to be exposed. The prosecution presented evidence of Alex's mounting debts, his imminent confrontation with PMPED partners about missing funds scheduled for June 10, 2021, and the pressure from the Beach family lawsuit. The defense, led by attorneys Dick Harpootlian and Jim Griffin, argued that the state's case was built on speculation and that Alex loved his family too much to harm them. They suggested unknown assailants committed the murders, possibly in retaliation for the boat crash or Paul's upcoming trial. The prosecution's most powerful evidence came from beyond the grave. Forensic experts recovered the video Paul had recorded on his phone at 8:44 p.m., just minutes before he was killed. In the background of that video, examining the family's dog, 3 voices could be clearly heard: Paul's, Maggie's, and unmistakably Alex's. Multiple witnesses, including Alex's longtime friends and family members, identified his voice on the recording. This video directly contradicted Alex's repeated statements to police that he had not been at the kennels that evening and had last seen Maggie and Paul at the house around 8:30 p.m. before leaving to visit his mother. When confronted with this evidence, Alex changed his story. He now admitted he had been at the kennels, but claimed he left shortly after to visit his mother, and the murders must have occurred after his departure. However, cell phone data showed Maggie's phone moved and locked at 8:49 p.m. and never moved again, while Paul's phone ceased all activity at the same time. Alex's vehicle data showed he left the property at 9:06 p.m., driving to his mother's house where he stayed for approximately 20 minutes, during which surveillance footage showed him looking remarkably composed and checking his phone repeatedly. Alex took the stand in his own defense, a risky decision that allowed prosecutors to cross-examine him for hours. He tearfully denied killing his family, but admitted to lying to investigators about being at the kennels. He attributed his lies to paranoia from drug addiction and panic. When asked why he lied, he said, "I was so wrong. I was so wrong." But his credibility had already been destroyed by the financial crimes and the pattern of deception. The prosecution presented evidence that 2 different weapons were used in the murders, a blackout rifle and a shotgun. Both types of guns the Murdaugh family owned, but which were never recovered. Gunshot residue was found on a jacket Alex wore the night of the murders. Blood spatter evidence suggested the shooter stood very close to the victims. And perhaps most damning, Alex had called Maggie multiple times that afternoon, asking her to come to Moselle, which she had been reluctant to do, having spent most of her time at the family's beach house in the months before her death. After 6 weeks of testimony from over 70 witnesses and presentation of hundreds of pieces of evidence, the jury deliberated for just 3 hours. On March 2nd, 2023, they returned guilty verdicts on 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. Alex Murdaugh showed no visible emotion as the verdicts were read. The next day, Judge Clifton Newman sentenced Alex to 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. In his sentencing remarks, Judge Newman addressed Alex directly, saying, "I know you have to see Paul and Maggie during the night times when you're attempting to go to sleep. I'm sure they come and visit you." He continued, "It might not have been you. It might have been the monster you became when you took those pills." The Murdaugh legal dynasty, which had dominated South Carolina justice for a century, ended in that courtroom. The Moselle property where Maggie and Paul died was sold at auction. Alex's surviving son, Buster, inherited a name now synonymous with corruption and murder rather than legal prowess. The legal proceedings continued beyond the murder convictions. In November 2023, Alex pleaded guilty to 22 federal charges, including wire fraud, bank fraud, and money laundering. He admitted to stealing nearly $9 million from clients and his law firm. He received an additional 27 years in federal prison. Shortly after, he pleaded guilty to 22 state financial fraud charges and received another 27 years, though these sentences run concurrent with his life sentences. In a separate case, attorney Corey Fleming, who had helped Alex steal the Satterfield settlement, pleaded guilty to conspiracy and was sentenced to 46 months in prison. Curtis Edward Smith, the man Alex hired to kill him, faced charges related to the assisted suicide scheme and drug distribution. The Beach family's wrongful death lawsuit against the Murdaugh estate was settled, though the terms remain confidential. The Satterfield family reached settlements totaling over $7 million, finally receiving compensation for Gloria's death and the stolen insurance money. For the communities of South Carolina's Low Country, the fall of the Murdaughs represented more than the end of a powerful family. It exposed how unchecked power and privilege could corrupt justice itself. For decades, the Murdaugh name had been synonymous with law and order, but behind that facade existed a pattern of lies, theft, and ultimately violence. The case revealed how one man's desperation to maintain appearances and avoid accountability for financial crimes led to the ultimate betrayal of murdering his own wife and son. The evidence presented at trial showed a calculated decision made by someone who believed he was above the law that his name and connections would protect him even from the most heinous accusations. This case stands as a stark reminder that justice, though sometimes delayed, must ultimately prevail over power and privilege. No family name, no matter how storied or influential, can permanently shield someone from the consequences of their actions. The rule of law depends on its equal application to all, regardless of wealth, status, or legacy. We invite you to share your thoughts on this case in the comments below, based on the facts presented at trial. Subscribe to our channel to stay updated on this case and other mysterious true crime stories that reveal the darkest corners of human nature and the pursuit of justice. Remember that behind every headline are real victims whose lives were cut short and families forever changed by violence and betrayal.